Hey students, today's topic for this video is... That's right, more information on the annexation of Korea. You know that Korea was officially annexed in 1910, but there was actually a series of treaties leading up to that. And with each signed treaty, there was all kinds of reactions, and Koreans did not like what was happening to them. For example, in the year 1908, 2 years before the official annexation, that 1 year alone had over 1,450 clashes that involved over 70,000 protesters. I know you guys are already familiar with the March 1st movement, but I wanted to give a little bit more information about it so you could be more prepared for the test. So you remember King Gojong? What a man, what a man! Yeah, that guy. When he died, there was all kinds of anti-Japanese rallies all over Korea. The most notable one you're probably familiar with, the March 1st movement. Okay, this was the time there was a huge backlash against the Japanese. The Koreans came up with a Declaration of Independence, which they read in Seoul. Over 2 million Koreans took part in these rallies, and the Japanese did not like this, and they responded very violently. There was a number of Korean sources that say that over 46,000 people were arrested, almost 8,000 people were killed, and over 15,000 people were wounded. Of course, the Japanese have their own records, and they say that only 8,000 people were arrested and only 500 people were killed and only almost 14,000 people were wounded. Personally, I tend to believe what the Koreans said over what the Japanese said. So yeah, there's a lot of protesting all over Korea, but was there any actual fighting? There was actually a lot of fighting. Koreans started to defect from the military and go up into the mountains and form guerrilla warrior bands. A lot of Koreans moved up to Manchuria, where they formed a resistance group known as the Dongkingun. Some Koreans even fled Korea and moved into Manchuria, where they formed the Liberation Army, which they called the Dongnipgun.
You win!
So there's a couple examples of how the Koreans reacted, but how did the Japanese react to the Korean reactions? Well, they did all kinds of things, and we get what's called the dark period in Korea. And this is because the Japanese completely suppressed Korean identity and repressed any kind of real Korean political or cultural life. Some of the things they did included Korea was now controlled by a Japanese military leader. Anything this guy wanted to do, he could just do it. He didn't have to talk or respond to anyone except for the Emperor of Japan. All posts in the government went to the Japanese. Koreans were allowed to work in the government, but they could only work in low ranks, and they were paid a lot less than the Japanese. The police force was expanded, and the majority of them were Japanese, and by the year 1918, they were allowed to flog or fine anyone they wanted to, even for minor offenses. Korean farmers had to give their lands to Japanese farmers, and sometimes they were even forced to work on the farm that they used to own. Korean rice was exported to Japan, which resulted in famine and death of Koreans. The Japanese also tightened control over the Korean education system. For example, Korea used to have over 2,000 public schools, but by the year 1922, that number had fallen to just 600 public schools. In the year 1910, the Japanese confiscated and burned as many as 300,000 books. Anyway, the list goes on, but I think you get the picture. Life in annexed Korea was not good. Life under the Japanese was so harsh that eventually, by the 1930s, Koreans just stopped resisting. And in fact, some of them even voluntarily joined the Japanese military. Probably the most famous example of this is your former president, Park Chung-hee, who also happens to be the father of your current president. He joined the Japanese voluntarily and fought for them during World War II. So by the end of World War II, many Koreans had been forced to fight for the Japanese. The total is estimated to be around 242,000 Koreans, of which about 22,000 of you guys died. Sorry, I keep saying you guys, and that's because most of you guys are Korean, but some of you aren't. So anyway, I hope all this information gives you a picture of what it would have been like to live during this time period. Thank God the Japanese lost World War II, otherwise, who knows, there may not be a Korea today, and perhaps your culture would have been completely wiped out by the Japanese. Thank God America joined and basically Save the whole freaking world with our nuclear.